The notion of a decline in Europe has become a topic of extensive debate, fueled by a mix of political, economic, and social challenges that have collectively shaped the continent's trajectory in recent decades. The factors contributing to this perceived decline are multifaceted, ranging from economic stagnation and political miscalculations to demographic challenges and societal shifts. Here's a closer look at why many believe Europe finds itself in decline, the key decisions that led to this position, and whether a path to recovery remains viable. Economic stagnation and dependency. Europe has long struggled with slow economic growth, particularly compared to other regions like Asia and North America. The European Union (EU) prioritized a single currency with the creation of the euro, but this has not provided the intended economic cohesion. Instead, it revealed the disparity between northern, industrialized economies like Germany and the struggling southern economies like Greece, Italy, and Spain. Austerity measures imposed after the 2008 financial crisis exacerbated economic divides, creating resentment and leading to a loss of faith in European institutions among many citizens. Additionally, Europe's dependency on external energy sources, particularly Russian gas, left it vulnerable to geopolitical pressures. The Russia-Ukraine conflict further underscored Europe's reliance on foreign resources, prompting energy crises and economic disruptions that European leaders seemed unprepared to address adequately. The EU's response, while unified in sanctions, has not entirely shielded European economies from inflation and rising costs, which have hit households hard. Political fragmentation and populism. Europe's political landscape has grown increasingly polarized, with traditional parties losing ground to populist movements on both ends of the spectrum. Many Europeans feel that mainstream politicians have lost touch with the needs of average citizens, prompting a backlash against the status quo. Populist movements have surged in response, advocating for policies that focus on national sovereignty and stricter immigration controls, appealing to those who feel marginalized by globalized policies. The EU's centralized decision-making process has often been criticized for being too slow and bureaucratic. Complex regulations and a lack of direct accountability have contributed to a perception that European institutions are overly distant from citizens' everyday lives. Brexit was a notable example, with the UK choosing to leave the EU in 2016, citing dissatisfaction with EU bureaucracy and a desire for national self-determination. This event shook the foundations of the EU, raising questions about the Union's future stability. Uncontrolled immigration and integration challenges. The influx of immigrants to Europe in recent years has been driven by several factors, primarily wars, political instability, and economic hardship in countries like Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, and various parts of Africa. These conditions have created waves of refugees and economic migrants seeking better living conditions, security, and opportunities in Europe. For some countries, particularly those on the southern borders of the EU, managing these numbers has been overwhelming, with Mediterranean nations like Italy, Greece, and Spain experiencing some of the highest numbers of arrivals. EU policies, notably the Schengen Agreement, allow for free movement across most member states. This means that once migrants enter any EU country, they can often move freely within the bloc. The Dublin Regulation, which requires asylum seekers to apply in the first EU country they enter, has strained border nations and created a backlog in already overwhelmed asylum systems. Some countries, like Germany in 2015, chose to open their doors to a large number of refugees, believing it was both a humanitarian obligation and an opportunity to fill gaps in their labor market. However, this decision revealed the limits of integration policies and sparked a lasting debate over how many people Europe could feasibly absorb. The challenges in integrating large numbers of immigrants from diverse cultural, religious, and socioeconomic backgrounds have become increasingly apparent. These challenges are often rooted in three main areas: economic integration, cultural adaptation, and social services capacity. Regarding economic integration, many immigrants arrive with limited language skills, little education, and few qualifications that match Europe's labor market needs. As a result, they often struggle to find stable, well-paying jobs, instead taking low-skilled or temporary work, or even becoming unemployed. This situation can create economic dependence on social welfare, which in turn generates resentment among local populations who may feel they are supporting newcomers who are not contributing sufficiently to the economy or not contributing at all, which is a major problem. Moving into the cultural adaptation. The cultural divide between immigrants and the native populations can sometimes be significant. Many immigrants come from regions with conservative social norms, especially regarding gender roles, religion, and personal freedoms, which can clash with Europe's liberal social values. In some areas, efforts to promote cultural assimilation have been limited, leading to the formation of segregated neighborhoods where newcomers are isolated from the rest of society. This isolation can lead to the development of parallel communities, where traditional cultural norms persist, often resulting in misunderstandings, mistrust, and a lack of mutual integration. Finally, if we think about the social services capacity, healthcare, education, housing, and welfare systems in many European countries were not prepared for the sudden influx of immigrants, and resources have become stretched thin. Schools in particular have struggled to accommodate new students who may not speak the local language, while also meeting the needs of local students. Healthcare systems, already burdened by aging populations, face additional pressure as they work to support the needs of newly arrived migrants. The housing market is another area under strain, with social housing often in short supply and waiting lists growing in areas of high immigrant concentration. These strains on social services can cause resentment among citizens who perceive immigrants as competitors for limited resources. Another factor that must be taken into account is about security and crime concerns. Security concerns are often cited in discussions around immigration, particularly regarding cases where violent incidents have involved immigrants or individuals with refugee backgrounds. While the majority of immigrants do not engage in criminal activity, many incidents of violence have fueled public fears. Many Europeans agree that uncontrolled immigration of people from countries with cultural values very different from those of Europe contributes to rising crime rates, which further fuels anti-immigrant sentiments. The issue of immigration and integration goes beyond the economic and political sphere, touching on questions about Europe's identity and values. Many Europeans feel that uncontrolled immigration has diluted cultural cohesion, challenging the traditional sense of European identity. This sentiment has led to introspection about the nature of European societies, with questions about the balance between multiculturalism and preserving cultural heritage. Some believe that the concept of a European identity can and should evolve to accommodate diverse backgrounds, while others argue that without cultural cohesion, social unity becomes harder to maintain. The success of integration efforts will likely determine the extent to which Europe can embrace a multicultural identity without losing a sense of unity. If Europe is to address the challenges of immigration successfully, it will require a balanced approach that prioritizes controlled and managed immigration, robust integration policies, and investment in social infrastructure. Policymakers will need to be proactive in creating policies that not only accommodate the reality of global migration, but also protect and nurture the values and resources of European societies. Effective integration could ultimately benefit Europe, bringing diverse perspectives, innovation, and solutions to demographic and economic challenges, but only if handled thoughtfully and responsibly, which seems is not the case at the moment. In conclusion, while uncontrolled immigration has presented substantial challenges for Europe, effective integration policies, coupled with an honest reassessment of immigration practices, could enable the continent to turn these challenges into opportunities, fostering a society that is both diverse and cohesive. Demographic challenges and aging population. Europe faces a demographic crisis as birth rates continue to fall below replacement levels. Countries like Italy and Germany are grappling with shrinking working-age populations and a growing elderly demographic. This shift places immense pressure on welfare systems, with fewer workers to support the pension and healthcare needs of an aging population. Attempts to boost birth rates through policy incentives have had limited success, and reliance on immigration to fill labor shortages has proven complicated and at times politically unpopular. The demographic issue is further complicated by the brain drain, where young skilled workers leave Europe for better opportunities elsewhere, particularly in the US and Asia. This outflow of talent exacerbates the labor shortage, contributing to slower innovation and economic stagnation. Now the question is there a way back? Europe's path to recovery is challenging, but not impossible. Addressing these issues will require bold reforms and an honest assessment of the political and economic structures that govern the continent. Here are some potential pathways. Economic reforms. Rebalancing the EU's economic policies to foster growth and reduce inequalities between member states is essential. Targeted investments in innovation, technology, and education could make Europe more competitive globally. Re-evaluating immigration policy. While immigration is vital to address labor shortages, more controlled and selective immigration policies could help address integration issues. Investments in education, job training, and community building could aid integration efforts and reduce social tensions. Political accountability and decentralization. Making EU institutions more transparent and accountable could help bridge the gap between citizens and policymakers. Decentralizing some aspects of decision-making could empower local governments to address issues more effectively. Investment in renewable energy and energy independence. While environmental goals are essential, Europe must balance them with energy security. Diversifying energy sources and investing in research for sustainable technologies can reduce dependency on foreign powers and stabilize the energy market. Encouraging family policies. Pronatalist policies that support families, such as affordable childcare, paid parental leave, and housing incentives, may help combat declining birth rates over time. In sum, Europe's challenges are considerable, but not insurmountable. Recovery requires a willingness to address tough questions about the EU's structure, the need for controlled immigration, and the rebalancing of economic priorities. Rebuilding Europe's vitality will depend mainly on its people, who have to forget about ideologies and think reasonably and objectively, and also its leaders, who have to address these issues and enact policies that inspire confidence among its people, fostering a sense of unity, stability, and shared purpose for the future.